Hello and welcome to NewsClick. Today we're joined by Professor Vikas Rawal of the CESP of Jawaharlal Nehru University, and he has been tracking very closely the number of distress deaths following the lockdown. By distress deaths, we mean deaths caused by distress of various reasons associated with the lockdown and not the deaths due to the COVID-19 infection. Thank you so much, Professor Rawal, for joining us.
Thank
So,
you.
in your recent article, you and your co-authors have tracked that as of April 12th, at least 181 people have died due to distress deaths have taken place. So, could you briefly outline what have been the key aspects of the study?
Yeah. So you see, we started keeping track of deaths that were happening because of various kinds of distress. It's an exercise that started somewhat casually, but then as it started sort of rising,
Right.
we felt the need to become more systematic in recording, and we reached out to others who could help us with news reports in other languages. We also realized that there were at least 3 or 4 other users on social media who were doing something similar, which was very helpful because then we could all sort of communicate with each other and help each other in ensuring that we don't miss reports and we don't double count and so on. But it's been a difficult exercise because not everything is reported, not everything is reported promptly, and we are unable to reach out to all the sort of vernacular language media.
Right.
But with what we could, we found that until the 12th of April, until at which point of time we started writing our piece, there had been 334 infection deaths because of COVID infection and the comorbidity. And in comparison, there had been 181 additional distress deaths. So now this is the main point that we have tried to make in the paper, that while certain level of mortality because of COVID infection is unavoidable, I mean, it can be reduced by better provisioning of public health, but a certain level of mortality is unavoidable because you really don't have a cure for COVID-19 and so on. The distress deaths are completely avoidable. There's no reason why anybody needs to die of hunger. There's no reason why anybody needs to die of fear or stigma or being killed as the person tried to reach home because of the lockdown and so on. So 180 completely preventable death is something that should be unacceptable. That's our first thing that we write in our paper. The second thing that we do is to look at what are the different causes because of which people have been dying. Distress deaths. What is the nature of this distress? And what we find is that there is actually a huge spectrum of kinds of things that have been happening. It started mainly with migrant workers suddenly being forced to walk on highways in large numbers to reach home and being met with accidents. So a large number of accident deaths on the road, being hit by a truck and things of that kind happened when this first wave of large number of migrants started on the 25th or so. But with that, there has been an increase in various kinds of distress. So the biggest is people committing suicide because of the fear that they might get infected, or because of the stigma that is associated with the possibility, the suspicion that a person might have COVID, and being shunned by the family, by the neighborhood, and by others in the village and so on, forcing people to commit suicide. The other is, so that is something that has increased. The other big reason of distress mortality is among the alcoholics. People who did not get any help to deal with their alcohol addiction when their access to alcohol was suddenly stopped. Another very, very important category is of people losing their lives because of hunger, starvation, loss of unemployment, exhaustion of walking hundreds of kilometers, distress associated directly with loss of livelihoods. That's a number that has steadily increased and has in fact started increasing faster than everything else. So there are these various reasons why people are dying.
Right.
The third thing that we do in the paper is then to try and, based on the information that is available in these news reports, try and make some sense of who are these people who are dying of distress. And the point that we make is that while the COVID infection is something that by and large everybody is vulnerable to. Anybody gets exposed to an infected person or a surface that has the virus can pick up infection, though the vulnerability of different let's say segments of population varies. And there are people for whom physical distancing is not an option. You live in cramped spaces in Dharavi. You don't have a choice to isolate yourself. There are people who, because of their work, because of their lives, are more exposed. Doctors are more exposed to infections and so on. There is that, but the virus per se does not distinguish. But if you look at the distress deaths, these deaths are almost entirely among the working people, among the poor and the vulnerable sections of the society. Out of 181 people that had died in distress deaths until the time when we wrote our paper, we could not classify a certain number. We could classify about 136 or so, out of which 131 are clearly identified as peasants, rural workers, urban manual workers, or destitutes.
Right.
So it's the vast majority, almost entirely. People who are, and in fact, people who we have not been able to identify are most likely also from these segments. So, for example, a bulk of them at least, alcoholics who died on the road, unidentifiable person, is most likely to be a person who was either destitute on the street, who was addicted, and therefore could not get alcohol and committed suicide, things of that kind, or consumed some poisonous substance, warnish, all kinds of crazy things happening for people because they are unable to get any help in dealing with the problems of withdrawal. So, a vast majority of victims of distress death are people who are from vulnerable sections of the society who died because they did not get any help, any assistance. That's the third thing. The final point that we make is that while infection deaths are concentrated in large cities, in Mumbai, in Thane, in Pune, in Indore, the distress deaths have spread very widely. The distress deaths are concentrated in small towns, in villages, all over the country. So the spread of distress and mind you, distress deaths are a symptom of a much larger distress that is that happened in the population. That distress has spread very widely. It has hit the vulnerable sections the most. It has hit the villages the most. It has hit the small towns the most. While the infections are still concentrated in big cities. So that's essentially what we have done.
So a key argument made by the supporters of the government is that this had to be done, and this was an emergency. It was an international emergency. The lockdown, was a sudden measure. There was no way of possibly avoiding a lot of this, and the lockdown actually helped, as Prime Minister himself said yesterday, that because of all these steps and sacrifices, we have managed to sort of control the disease. So how would you respond to that in the light of these data?
Look, I think one is that it's wrong to say that it had to be done suddenly. You had a warning of 3 full months. The disease appeared in China in December. After that, there was news of it spreading in so many different countries before it expanded in a major way in India. So you had a fairly substantial period of early warning in which you could have actually prepared. There is no reason why migrant workers in cities could not have been given a 10-day notice that something of this kind was coming, and if they needed to go back to the villages, they should do that in time before the country is shut down. There is no reason why farmers could not have been informed in advance to deal with the sowing that they were going to have to do to procure their fertilizer. There is no reason why planning for providing subsidized ration to everybody could not have been done beforehand.
Right.
Why was it an afterthought? Why is it that government had to announce this days after announcing the lockdown that people will be provided, and that assistance has not yet reached? A vast majority of people are still, waiting for that assistance to reach. Now, why is it that was not done early enough?
Right.
So it's not correct at all to say that there was no time for government to inform people, and it suddenly came. It did not suddenly come. The second thing is that we don't yet know how successful lockdown has been in containing the spread.
True.
The spread is rising exponentially. We are still in the stage where there is an exponential increase in the spread taking place. Now, it's a big question on how successful is the lockdown in containing the spread of COVID-19.
Right.
What is clear is that you've hugely exacerbated distress. You've hugely exacerbated distress, causing people to lose their lives. In your attempt to save their lives, you've actually caused loss of life.
Right. So another key worrying factor is the number of stigma deaths, because that also shows that clearly the government's communication mechanism, awareness mechanism, probably at the level of at the lowest level in terms of primary health centers, is not really working in telling people that this is a disease that can be cured, and it need not be seen as some sort of a death sentence.
Absolutely. No, I think this is something where government is actually directly culpable. So this whole idea, this whole communalization of spread of COVID-19 that happened in the context of
Tablighi Jamaat issue
in India, I think this is somewhere this whole problem of stigma was actually a creation of the ruling dispensation, and I don't think there is any getting away from that. That's one. The second is that you rightly say, there are a large number of deaths that have happened simply out of fear. People just being scared that they are infected, they might infect their children.
Right.
And they, in an attempt to save your children, you kill yourself. Things of that kind are completely avoidable. There is no reason why people need to lose their lives out of fear.
Right.
People who try to, the miserable conditions of public hospitals in India, people attempting to escape from those miserable conditions and dying in the process. This is ridiculous.
Right.
Is it?
Absolutely. So, and finally, with the lockdown extended for 19 more days, there is a chance of many of these trends getting, say, at least some of these cases, for instance, like you mentioned, hunger-related deaths or stigma-related deaths, there's a possibility of this kind of increasing. So, at least as of now, what are the measures the government can urgently take on some of these fronts?
Before I answer that question, I want to say something. I think one needs to understand that distress deaths can rise very fast. They can rise exponentially, just as the infection deaths can. The distress accumulates. People who are moderately food insecure, their food insecurity, if the period of lockdown is prolonged, accumulates, and people then cross that threshold of tolerance and either die or commit suicide or get exposed to being sick for other reasons because they've just not been eating enough and things of that kind. So you see the distress can accumulate, the economic factors compound it, and you see the breakdown of supply chains, collapse of demand, and the entire mayhem that has been caused in the economy. These things feed into each other, which results in a situation where this distress can really increase very fast, increase exponentially. And that is my very serious concern, that it is let's say, underestimated the scale at which this we are facing the crisis of distress here. So that's my first point. The second thing is that what can the government do? I mean, there have been many recommendations. People have made many recommendations, and government has been very slow in dealing with this. There is no reason. You have to say every citizen is entitled to free ration for next 3 months.
Right.
Irrespective of whether you have a ration card or you don't, where you are, if you have not got food, you should be able to go to a ration shop and say, I need grain.
Right.
And you will be able to get grain, period. So you just have to say everybody will be provided for grain. Government is sitting on a huge amount of food stocks. Before this happened, their big worry was how to get rid of that stock. Their whole problem was that the next harvest of wheat was coming.
Right.
The godowns of FCI were full, and they didn't know where they were going to keep the grain. Now there is a moment when you need to get that grain out, give it to the people. Okay, you've been wasting money in trying to hold it.
Right.
You just give it to people, and the people, that would save lives.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's one. The other is NREGA. Now, increasing wages of NREGA workers at a time when there is a lockdown is laughable. I mean, there is a lockdown. Nobody is working.
Right.
What's the point of increasing wages? Okay. The NREGA, the Act has a provision for unemployment allowance being given to people. When people cannot be given work, they are entitled to unemployment allowance. You simply have to do this. Every person who holds an NREGA job card should be paid an unemployment allowance equal to the wages of NREGA workers for this entire period of lockdown.
Right.
Okay. So there are some straightforward things that you got to do. There is a rupture in the supply and the demand. The demand has collapsed. The supply is not reaching, and this is a big problem for perishables. Think of milk.
Right.
Okay. People are unable to buy milk, and milk producers are unable to sell it.
Yeah.
Now you need to just introduce a system of subsidy of milk. You have to say that all and milk is predominantly sold through the cooperative sector. You have to say your mother dairies, your Amul and all the district dairies will be given a subsidy of 2 rupees a liter, 3 rupees a liter for every liter of milk that they sell.
Right.
And prices of milk will be brought down. This would help in creating demand for that milk, which would go a long way in helping your farmers who are unable to sell it at the price at which milk was sold.
Absolutely.
There is no demand, and the supply chains are broken down. So you need to ensure that the supply chains function, and you need to provide these forms of support through which some demand can be created.
Right. Thank you so much, Professor Rawal, for talking to us.
Thank you, Prashant. Thank you.
That's all we have time for today. Keep watching NewsClick.